Hi everybody, this is Jim with Great Books, Big Ideas. I want to do a walkthrough video of this edition of the Discourses of Epictetus in Heritage Press, published in, I think it was 1968. We'll look at some of the information and the extras involved with this. It has very nice illustrations that I want to show to you. And I also want to do some light comparison between that edition and the edition of Discourses that are in this Great Books of the Western World, translated by George Long. I read this recently and had more trouble than I thought I was going to with the translation. It was a bit stuffy and stilted and kind of gnarly, knotted, and that could just be a function of the style of the writing, but I just think it's interesting to compare editions sometimes. So I'm going to go over to the document cam and we'll take a look at the Heritage Press edition. So it comes in this slip case. I found this used for, I don't know, it wasn't much money. I think it was less than $10. The 1960s era of Heritage Press can be a little spotty in terms of quality. Sometimes they seem to skimp a little bit, and other volumes are really nice. I think this one's a pretty nice one. This is interesting what they've got here. If you're collecting, you can see there's some staining there from age, but always make sure you have a sand glass whenever possible if you're collecting Heritage Press, because these add some value to the books. These inserts came when you mail ordered these books as a member of the book club. So in my experience, most of the time when I buy a Heritage Press, it has this in it, and you know, it's sometimes they don't come with the slipcase. I always try to look for editions that have both, but a few of mine don't have one or the other. Anyway, there's lots of good information in here that I'd like to share some of it with you. But let's take a look at this, the title page and so forth. So here you're immediately stunned by this artwork. The illustrations are by Hans Erni. So let's talk about Hans Erni first of all, and what you get with his work. So he was from Switzerland, from the town of Meggen. This art is in the neoclassic style, and you get 5 double spreads, 1 single page in different, what the insert calls gem-like colors, varied textures, and sweeping lines. Okay. These really pop for me. I like these illustrations a lot, and they're all printed to bleed off the edge of the page, so I think we call that full bleed, and they look great. There's also some line art interspersed here too. Well, here's what you get with this edition. You get an introduction, a nice sized introduction. You get also an introduction to Stoicism as part of that, the psychology of Epictetus, the psychology of conduct, ethical principles. So just a really nice overview, which right off the bat, that's a lot more than you're getting with the Great Books of the Western World. Which gives you a brief biographical note that's less than a page and nothing else. Now, one thing you do get with the Great Books of the Western World is, let me jump to it, the Discourses. You'll see these footnotes, and a lot of these are comparisons to the New Testament. So one interesting feature of Epictetus's philosophy is he is in the 1st century of the Common Era, and this is right when Christianity is formulating. and you find some parallels between his teachings and the teaching of Jesus and the apostles. And that's what these footnotes are meant to invite you to do, is to compare things that Epictetus was saying and things that the New Testament was saying. I don't know if those notes are in this edition of Epictetus, but that is one interesting feature of the Great Book Set. That being said, total lack of any critical apparatus other than just that really brief biographical note. But here you're getting like a nice chunk of information. And here's one of these 2-page spreads. Just colors are just really gorgeous here on this. Yeah, I'm very impressed. And you get cool illustrations like that. Is really inspiring. I think it makes you want to read the book, and it enhances what you're reading. So here's book 1, and you go through. Let me give you some notes on the typography and some of the printing details here, because you always get these in the sand glass. So the book was designed by Max Kauflich. He's the book designer, also of Switzerland. So here are the details. So Mr. Kauflich chose to have the text set in 14-point monotype Garamond, based on a face cut in the 16th century by Claude Garamond of France. The printing was done by Kellogg and Bulkley of Bloomfield, Connecticut, on paper specially made for this project by the Monadnock Paper Mills in Bennington, New Hampshire. So a true New England product. And to reproduce the paintings, they used Rainbows Incorporated of Hazardville, Connecticut, also of New England. They did the color separations, and they did a fine job. The side papers are done by also by Ernie. So let me take you through some more of the illustrations. I can see there's really not much in the way of footnotes in this edition, by the way. You do get some drawings. You get little quotes in like a cursive script. Look at that spread. There's another one. Just I wish you could see the colors in person. They really look lovely. The book has held up great over the years. You're looking at something that was made in 1968, and it just, aside from some staining on the inside covers, this feels brand new. You also get this text, which is not in the Great Book Set, called the Manual or Enchiridion. So that's a nice add-on. Not very long. You do get some endnotes here, so that's good to know. Some glossary of terms. So it's a really nice package overall. That's pretty cool. Now, a few notes about Epictetus, because as good as this book looks, what really matters are the words on the page and the ideas behind the words. So Epictetus was one of the great Stoic philosophers, and As I said before, he was paralleling the early Christian thinkers, and they seem to have been influenced by him. He was a slave, eventually became free, but the slave mentality of Epictetus informs his philosophy and his ethics. He was a slave of a man named Epaphroditus. I'm sorry about the pronunciation. Epaphroditus, a freedman who was a secretary to Emperor Nero, the infamous Nero. And there's a story that goes that is probably apocryphal, but it's been attached to Epictetus, that when his master was torturing him, the slave Epictetus remarked quietly, "You will break my leg." And when that happened, Epictetus added in the same tone of voice, "What did I tell you?" So, a little Stoic humor for you. Very dry. Like a dry martini. Okay, our translator for this edition was P.E. Matheson, Percy Ewing Matheson, an Oxford man, a classicist, and he lived to the ripe old age of 87. He died in 1946. So we do have a different translator here, and we might compare a passage. Maybe we'll just try to read the first paragraph of the Discourses and have a shootout between the Matheson translation and the George Long translation. Okay? We'll start with the George Long translation. And here's the first paragraph as rendered by George Long. Of all the faculties, you will find not one which is capable of contemplating itself, and consequently not capable either of approving or disapproving. How far does the grammatic art possess the contemplating power? As far as forming a judgment about what is written and spoken, and how far music? As far as judging about melody, does either of them then contemplate itself? By no means. But when you must write something to your friend, grammar will tell you what words you must write, but whether you should write or not, grammar will not tell you. And so it is with music, as to musical sounds. But whether you should sing at the present time and play on the lute, or do neither, music will not tell you. What faculty then will tell you? That which contemplates both itself and all other things. And what is this faculty? The rational faculty. We have a footnote cross-referencing Marcus Aurelius. For this is the only faculty that we have received which examines itself, what it is, and what power it has, and what is the value of this gift, and examines all other faculties. For what else is there which tells us that golden things are beautiful? For they do not say so themselves. Evidently, it is the faculty which is capable of judging of appearances. What else judges of music, grammar, and the other faculties, proves their uses, and points out the occasions for using them. Nothing else. Okay, so you're getting a little bit of a peek at the difficulty of the style of the Discourses. Now, this is a function, I think, in part because Epictetus didn't actually write the Discourses. What we have is a rendering from notes from one of his students, Arrian, who and it's very similar to Aristotle, where somebody was taking good notes. In fact, I don't think Epictetus wrote anything. He was like Socrates that way. Plato filters Socrates like through the dialogues in the same way that Arrian is filtering Epictetus. Anyway, and that that happened a little bit with Aristotle too. So that partly accounts for the sort of weird, kind of gnarly, juxtaposed style of things. And it sort of hops around a lot, but it could also be the translation. So let's look at that same paragraph in the Matheson translation. Of our faculties in general, you will find that none can take cognizance of itself. None, therefore, has the power to approve or disapprove its own action. Our grammatical faculty, for instance, how far can that take cognizance? Only so far as to distinguish expression. Our musical faculty, only so far as to distinguish tune. Does any one of these then take cognizance of itself? By no means. If you are writing to your friend, when you want to know what words to write, grammar will tell you. But whether you should write to your friend or should not write, grammar will not tell you. And in the same way, music will tell you about tunes, but whether at this precise moment you should sing and play the lyre or should not sing nor play the lyre, it will not tell you. What will tell you then? That faculty which takes cognizance of itself and of all things else. What is this? The reasoning faculty. For this alone of the faculties we have received is created to comprehend even its own nature. That is to say, what it is and what it can do, and with what precious qualities it has come to us, and to comprehend all other faculties as well. For what else is it that tells us that gold is a goodly thing? For the gold does not tell us. Clearly it is the faculty which can deal with our impressions. What else is it which distinguishes the faculties of music, grammar, and the rest, testing their uses and pointing out the due seasons for their use? It is reason and nothing else. Okay, you can hear differences and see differences right away. I much prefer the Matheson. The prose has a lot more balance. You get a sense of like interior monologue, the guy like talking, like voicing like the questions and then giving the answer. It's less stumbling, it's less broken, it's less tripping on itself. And that paragraph all by itself makes me want to reread Epictetus in this translation, because I think I would get a heck of a lot more out of it than the George Long. But you can never have too many translations, can you? Because they all have their strengths and weaknesses. What I like about the George Long are some of the footnotes, the comparisons to the New Testament and all that, comparisons to other Stoic philosophers. Here you're getting like a much nicer reading experience and something that I think is probably going to be a lot easier to read. Plus you get the extra, the manual at the end. So that is the Discourses of Epictetus. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough. Keep an eye out for this volume if you're at all interested in Stoicism, because I do see it, like not all the time, but it's not infrequently that I see it in the used bookstores. Like it does pop up, and it won't cost you an arm and a leg, and you'll have something really nice to put on the shelf and something you can savor and maybe pass along to other people down the road. Thanks for watching. Leave some comments, feedback in the comment section down below. You can ask questions, or you can shoot me an email. That's email address is in the show description. Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.